Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of rawradianthealth.com, and I'm Natasha St. Michael, and thank you so much for joining me. So today is Monday, it's the beginning of the week, and over the weekend I received an email, a request from someone to talk a little bit about binge eating on the weekends and what to do about it. This person had wrote me sort of describing that, during the week they eat like a really good diet, they keep with the plan. They're quite strict with themselves, but they're so good, and they're eating like a really pure diet. But once the weekend comes, it's like everything they've done goes like out the window, and they find themselves like binge eating. And they're wondering like, why is this happening, and what can they do to prevent this? So there's many reasons why this happens, and this is common. This is like, people don't really talk about it, but it happens a lot, is that people are able to sort of maintain their diet and their goals and their eating patterns and habits, on more of like a healthier level during the week. But when the weekend comes around, many people are really faced with a lot of challenges, and especially the challenge of, overeating, binge eating, things like that. And there's many reasons why this happens. It's partially psychological, but it's also emotional, and it's also physical. There's many reasons why this happens to people, and why they go from one extreme half the week and the other extreme the other half. And pretty much the first thing is that when someone during the week is really good on their diet, sometimes they're a little too good, and sometimes they're a little too restrictive. I see this a lot, you guys know I coach people for a living with their diets, and I see so many food journals. That's the first thing I always ask all my clients: keep a food journal. I want to see what they're eating. And I see this a lot, that when people get onto either, a diet to get healthy, or to lose weight, or to get rid of chronic health conditions, things like that a lot of times their diets are very, very restrictive, and they don't eat very much, and not much of a variety. And they kind of just keep with this like one diet, where they have the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And then usually by the weekend, by Saturday, they just lose it, and they pig out on everything in sight. And the reason why is because that Monday to Friday, they're first of all not eating enough. Okay, so a lot of times if you're not eating enough, that builds up, and then over a few days, your body starts screaming out. It starts, needing more nutrition just to even be able to function. We need calories for our brain to work and for our body to work. And sometimes if you're not getting enough, it has its effect. And the body will do what it can to sort of send you the signals to get you to start adding in a little bit more food. And it doesn't mean you need to be adding in a lot, but even just adding a little bit more food during the week, you would notice that by the time the weekend comes, you're not famished for everything in sight, but that the weekend comes and you kind of just continue with your diet because it's fulfilling you. It's taking, your diet is giving you all the nutrients and everything you need. But the moment that you're not giving yourself everything you need, your body will lash out, and it will do it in ways that are a little bit weird, making you overeat just to compensate for what you're not getting before. So that's something to think about. And another thing is that, the weekends are very different from during the week. And during the week, most people go to school or they go to work, and they're on a schedule. Their life has a set pattern. They wake up every day at a certain time, they go to sleep at a certain time, they're eating their meals at a certain time, they're going to work at a certain time. Everything is in a pattern, and suddenly weekend comes along and most people have Saturday and Sunday off, or at least they have one day off, and this is a time when suddenly they're not on their set schedule, and there's no pattern, there's no nothing, and so suddenly it's just them and some free time, and what else to do but to eat. So a lot of people find they eat more on the weekends than they do during the week because they're not distracted, and because the weekends is also a time to be more social, it's to be more active, it's to be out doing things and surrounded by things. So you might find yourself eating more on the weekends than you do during the week, which is kind of normal as well. But there's issues too people have with the weekends, because a lot of times, when people are stressed out or they're unsatisfied with certain things in their life, or they're feeling a lot of anxiety or pressure, the weekends can be really hard. Weekends can be really, really difficult for many people because they no longer have work or school to distract them, and suddenly the weekends come around and they have to face their life, or they have to face those things in their life or feel those things in their life that are not always the pleasant things. And it could be that you feel lonely, and you don't feel lonely during the week because you're surrounded by people at school and people at work, but the weekend comes around and you're by yourself, so you might feel lonely. Or you might hate your job, or you hate your school, or you hate your friends, or whatever it is. There might be issues in your life that you're not satisfied with, and during the week you're more distracted from it than on the weekends. Weekends are always the time when people, it's like you go back to yourself. You check in with yourself, and for some people at certain points in their life, it's not always that easy. I've gone through it myself. Weekends sometimes used to be very difficult because I used to immerse myself in work in order to not have to face certain things in my life. And so sometimes when we're not facing certain things in our life, or they're too difficult to face, we might go to things like food, and that's where a lot of people find themselves going to food and binging out on food in order to numb themselves, or in a way to relieve anxiety or stress. I mean, food can be like a drug. So a lot of people have that issue on the weekend where it's like everything's just too much to deal with. So they just sort of dive in to overeating. And also too is that weekends can be a time where you're by yourself. And most people find themselves binge eating and overeating when they are by themselves. It's not so common to go on like a full food bender or binge when you're surrounded by people, or when you're with anyone at all. Most people, go overeat and go on like a food binge in the privacy of their own home by themselves. And so usually on the weekend, that's when you're by yourself the most, right? You're not in school, or you're not at work. So that's something to consider as well. And that's one thing, I've actually recommended to a lot of my clients that do have that issue is, if you find that you eat too much when you're by yourself, or you overdo it when you're alone, then it's better then to, keep your meals when you're with people. Don't eat by yourself. Don't allow yourself to even bring that stuff into the house. That if you need, to have that piece of cake, don't buy the cake and bring it home, but go out somewhere and have the cake there. I'm always recommending people on that one. It's like, if you have to have something, have portion control it. Don't buy the big thing of it, but go somewhere and have it there, because then you're more inclined to just have what's in front of you and not go and say, oh, I want another piece of cake. It's like, and when you're eating it in public, you're more conscious of it, because people that have a tendency to go towards binge eating and emotional eating and overeating is that they also kind of zone out when they're eating. They're not even really all that conscious when they're in that mode of overeating. A lot of times they have the television on, or they have something else going on to distract them from the actual binge itself. And so that's why if you go out in public and you go to either a cafe or a restaurant or somewhere and you eat your food there, you're way more conscious of how you're eating it, how quickly you're eating it, and what you're eating. So that's really, something I really recommend. If you find yourself having this problem, then, really put down the rules for yourself that, and find where your weak points are, that if you have a weakness with certain food, then don't even go near it, or if you find that you overdo it, then make sure that you're portion controlling these things, and go out of your way to ensure that you can follow these things, because, there's nothing worse for someone's self-confidence is to set themselves up for disaster. There's nothing worse than that, especially when someone's like Monday to Friday doing so well on their diet, and then the weekend comes around and they just set themselves up for problems. So it's really a matter of figuring out where you're at And what are those things that can trigger you to feel weak, and what are those things that can make you feel strong? Weekends. If you want to avoid binge eating and overeating and all that kind of stuff and emotional eating on the weekends, then do things on the weekend that make you feel good. Number one, on the weekends, go and exercise. Hang out and spend time with people that make you feel good. Do things that make you laugh. Do things that bring up your mood. Do things that make you feel good to be alive. The more good you have in your life, especially at those times when you know you might be at your more of a lower point, those are the times to really bring in those tools that make you feel good. Super important, because the more good you feel about your life and what you're doing, the less you don't even need to be even thinking or worrying about those things that can bring you down. All right, you guys, so I'm wishing you a fabulous day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.